It's time for Chapter 4 of the training manual, Driving Fundamentals. Do you know this?
Welcome to Miss Hood's
Retired
School Bus Life.
Training Manual, Chapter 4, Driving Fundamentals. We're talking about driving fundamentals, and the first thing I want to talk about is getting ready to drive. Before you can move this big old bus, you've got to make sure that you're in your seat. You're comfortable. You've got it moved to where your feet comfortably touch the pedals. You've got your mirrors all set so that you can see all the way around you, which was one of the things I love most about driving my bus, were those mirrors.
Very expensive mirrors. I can see you in my mirror.
What I miss most about my school bus now that I'm driving RVs is there's no windows. And on a school bus, you've got all these windows to see everything that's going on around you. Now, when you first arrive at your bus, you're going to open that hood. You're going to check your fluids.
Now, when I check my oil, it's in the morning. It's not as easy to see. I have my flashlight. But it's right here. Just pull it out. Kind of wipe that baby off. Really good. So it kind of supposed to be yellow, but y'all get the idea. Put it back down in there. Make sure that it looks good. Like this. When you're here, you're looking down to see. You can see any leaks under the bus. If you have any kind of hose break, it's all going to pour out right here under the hood of the bus.
You're going to take a good look at the wiring and the hoses, and are there any leaks? You're going to take a good look at those things before you get in the seat and drive to pick up your students.
I have to look at everything and make sure there's nothing missing and nothing broken. You've got the slats that we have to look at. You've got your brake drums, your water. Make sure all your hoses, there's no cracks or breaks.
So your seat is set, mirrors are set. You turn that bus on. And you check all your gauges. You know, you're going to do your lab test.
The next step is to apply the brake. You should not lose more than 3 psi in 1 minute.
You're going to check to make sure your air brakes are working the way they should. You're going to do all those checks of everything you see on that dashboard. A school bus is longer and heavier. Taller and wider.
People are always asking me, how can you go from driving this to driving this?
And a much slower acceleration. A bus has a longer stopping distance. It is amazing to me when I watch some school bus drivers tailgate. It just makes me shudder. And it really makes me shudder when I see semi-truck drivers that are right on the back end of somebody. I think, you've got so much weight behind you, you stop, that weight is gonna push you on down the road. So it's very, very important to keep distance between you and the traffic in front of you.
Yeah, my bus driver buddy let me in.
When I first started driving, I remember learning about the pivot point. And I had a trainer that said something to me that was so valuable. I want to share it with you. He said, if you take a pencil and you turn it, you can see where the pivot point is on the pencil, so that when you turn it, you don't bump into everything all around you. That pivot point, you have to know that. Pivot point. This wheel has to make that corner. So you've got to keep that bus straight until you know this wheel can go right into the roadway without going over the curb, taking out the light pole, taking out whoever's standing on the curb. It's very, very important. Pivot point. What are the advantages of driving a school bus? The height. The height gives you a view of everything that's going on around you. You can see way down the road sitting up this high. The height is a great advantage.
So my little smart car is 16.5 inches tall, and when I get in my bus seat, I'm sitting at 62 inches.
The size of the bus makes it much easier for everybody around you to see. Although sometimes I wonder, when people pull right out in front of me, I'm thinking, do you know that you just pulled out in front of a big yellow school bus? How do you miss a big yellow school bus? Everywhere I go, that is what I see. The height of a bus is an advantage when you're in an accident. If you have somebody run into the back of you, a car, the seats are about, I think the bottom of the seats are about right here. So that gives you an advantage in an accident. I don't want to downplay accidents like this is indestructible, because that's not true. But in everyday traffic, if you drive the way you're supposed to drive, the chances are very slim that you're going to be in a serious accident. The disadvantages of driving an oversized vehicle is that they will tip easier. Now, they won't tip on a dime. You have to really be going fast and making that turn. Maybe you missed and you think you're going to make it, and you're going too fast. You're going to tip it over. if you do that. If you get off the edge of the road and there's an embankment and you get the bus in an unstable situation, it's going to tip over. The height of this vehicle when I was driving is about 11 feet 4 inches. And there is a greater chance of hitting an overhead obstruction. See that sign up there that says 13 feet and 7 inches? School buses can go under that overpass. Due to the width, it's 8 feet wide. And there are some country roads that are 8.5 feet wide, which means you have 3 inches of space in the lane on either side. And it is a challenge when you're driving down some roads where the trees have grown 2 feet into the lane. And when it's empty, it weighs about, I think, 8.5 tons. I think this is what they said. Yeah, 8.5 tons empty. 12 tons when it's full. Tons. So that's how much you're moving down the road at 45 miles an hour. On the interstate, 65 miles an hour. We were allowed to go 65. We had a governor on the buses that it would slow the bus down at about between 65 and 67. The nice thing about sitting up so high is that you can see everything that's going on. You can see way ahead of you, and you can start planning before you get into that dangerous situation. When I'd be driving down the road and I knew there was a traffic light ahead of me and there was a lot of traffic, then I had to turn left, because remember, we're always riding in the right-hand lane. The controls of the school bus on that dashboard: speedometer, odometer, voltmeter, oil pressure gauge, water temperature gauge, fuel gauge, high, bright lights, low lights, turn signal indicators, air gauge, noise switch, the indicator lights, the red lights indicating a low air pressure or loss of hydraulic brakes. All those are on your dashboard, and they are so important. You must always keep an eye on those gauges. If there is insufficient pressure to move the oil through the engine, that red light's going to come on, and when it does, you get that bus parked, you get that engine off as quickly and as safely as you can. If the water in the engine is not circulating properly, then your heat gauge is going to start rising. It's really important that you keep your eye on that heat gauge all the time you're driving the bus. It's going to vacillate, because that's just the nature of the beast while you're driving. But if it continues to go up and it gets close to 200, when it hits that between 200 and 220, you're going to have a buzzer go off. You're going to have a light come on, and it is warning you your engine is too hot. And you need to get that bus stopped as quickly as you can. You need to be radio in and saying, this is my temperature gauge. We're at 200. It's been going up. What do you want me to do? Your voltmeter or your alternator light, your gauge, You are watching that, and you're watching that voltage. When I was driving, I think mine stayed on 12 or a little bit above 12. But when it starts moving below 12, you are having an alternator problem, and you need to be calling in. If you have a radio and you can call in, you need to be letting them know. That's when you start turning your lights on the inside of the bus if you have them on. You turn them off. You turn everything off that you can't, and still operate your bus safely, and start looking for a safe place to pull over and stop, because if your voltage is dropping, you're having a problem. If you get in your bus in the morning and you're getting ready to go and your air pressure gauge is not at 120 psi, you need to be radioing in and asking questions about whether you should take it out on the road, because something may be seriously wrong. You know that the fuel gauge means this is how much fuel you have. I made it a rule that I never left the compound if my bus was under half a tank. I know sometimes I got a little bit of grief from the fuel attendants because it felt like to them I was always pulling in to get fuel, but I'm not going to drive that bus down the road with less than a half tank of gas. Now, most drivers will let it get to 1/4 of a tank of fuel, but I'm not that brave. We all get in our cars, jump in our cars, stick in the key, and we just turn it and we go down the road. But you can't do that in a school bus. In a school bus, you have to turn the key 1/4 and let the system do a check all around the bus. You can hear it. The other thing that you're doing when you turn that key on is, quickly as you turn that key on, you are looking for a light flash that says ABS. And it's quick. I mean, it is less than 4 seconds from the time you turn that key. So you've got to watch for it to flash up in front of you to let you know that the anti-lock brake system is working. As a bus driver, I was required every 5 minutes to do a check of all my mirrors, side mirror, crossing mirror, rear view mirror, crossing mirror, side mirror, and then do a sweep across the dashboard and check all the gauges. Once every 5 minutes, I was to do that check. Now, where I was trained, they wanted us to keep our hands on the steering wheel at 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock. That's how they wanted us to drive. And when we turned the wheel, they wanted us to do a hand over hand, like this. They didn't want you to do the push and pull, kind of turning your steering wheel, or the palming the steering wheel. They didn't want you to do that. They wanted you to do that hand over hand motion. And that's how we drove our bus. There is something in the training manual that they put in the training manual that when I read it, I just busted busted out laughing. Now, I have to read you this because I think it's so funny. Do not use first aid kits, fire extinguishers, sticks, etc. to hold the throttle at a higher RPM during cold weather startup. I know you're wondering where the fire extinguisher is. That's another story for another day, but this bus won't move without a fire extinguisher on it. Putting the bus in motion was a little, use the right foot to depress the foot brake, move the selector level to the drive position, release the parking brake, release the foot brake, depress the accelerator. I'm thinking, why in the world did they put this in this training manual? And then I thought about the years that I lived with my attorney husband, my ex-husband, and what they would try to find to sue somebody over. And I can just hear him saying, well, did you put it in writing how to start move the vehicle? Well, did you put it in writing how to move the vehicle? How to put it in the right gear? I can just hear that. So that's why I believe that's in there. I do have another video where I talk about the distance that you need to have between you and the car in front of you because of your stopping distance based on your speed. But I want to go over this just one more time because it's in this chapter about perception distance, reaction distance, braking distance, and brake lag. Perception distance is when you're driving your bus down the road and you see that the vehicles in front of you have stopped. It takes 3/4 of a second for your eyes to send that message to your brain. And it takes another 3/4 of a second for your brain to get the message to your foot to push on the brake pedal. That's called reaction distance. Your brain to your foot, reaction distance. And then your braking distance at 55 miles per hour on dry pavement, it can take a heavy vehicle about 170 feet to stop, or about 4.5 seconds. So now you have 6 seconds that it's going to take you to stop that bus. And you will travel the distance of a football field before your bus will stop. Remember this. And last, but definitely not least, those children on your bus have parents that are expecting to see their children home safely and getting to school safely. And that's our responsibility. You're a good driver. You haven't forgotten that. Well, the sun is setting and I'm running out of time. So Driving Fundamentals Part 2 will be posted at a later date. It's a training kind of day in Miss Hood's Retired School Bus Life for all you